Good afternoon and welcome to Oz Finance Weekly. I'm Greg and this is my co-host Jordan. In today's episode, we will be looking into the background of the acquisition of Perth Glory by the London Football Exchange and its eventual abandonment of the deal, as well as looking into what key lessons we can take from this event about commercialism in Australian sports. In 2020, UK-based cryptocurrency group, the London Football Exchange, looks set to purchase the A-League franchise Perth Glory from Tony Sage. Sage, who had become the sole owner of the football club in 2009, said that the reasoning behind him looking for an investment partner was because he was unable to compete with the financial power of the other A-League clubs. Sage stated in 2019 that the financial loss he faced was $2.9 million, which, as a sole owner of the club, is a huge loss compared to the clubs that are owned by large stakeholder groups. Over the span of 18 months, Sage was looking to sell the club and had received 4 offers, which he declined due to unacceptable conditions such as changing the club's name and colors. Then he received an offer from the UK-based cryptocurrency group, the London Football Exchange, which describes itself as being the first football club stock exchange that allows for the acquisition of shares by fans, traders, and investors. Sage, after 4 weeks of negotiations, looked to sell 80% of his stake in the club to the London Football Exchange. The deal between the London Football Exchange and Perth Glory had fallen through and was confirmed by the Football Federation of Australia. This decision took place after Mr. Sage had flown down to London to discuss a due diligence process with his lawyers and London Football Exchange. Ultimately, this resulted in the abandonment of the acquisition of Perth Glory. From the beginning of this deal, the London Football Exchange had been a controversial business. They were reportedly being sued by companies out of London and New York based on several different business matters. Another reason for the call of due diligence process was the fake news, mixed messages, and conflicting statements released by both parties involved. Glory and LFE released a joint statement claiming that the deal had been reached. Even the founder of the London Football Exchange, Jim Elward, released a mysterious Twitter video celebrating the news of the deal and their plan of building a tokenized ecosystem. 2 days later, Perth Glory stated that their fans mustn't believe the fake news surrounding the deal and their club hasn't been sold. What confused everyone surrounding this event was that Mr. Sage had to do a due diligence process on the very organization that he was set to become chairman of in March 2020. I will now pass you on to Jordan to explain the key findings from this event.
Thanks, Greg. Now let's discuss this week's topic's key elements to look out for. We learned that Tony Sage was looking to sell at least 80% of his stake in the club to the LFE. The reasoning behind this was based on the simple fact that he was just unable to keep up with the financial strains of owning an A-League football club, as he mentioned himself that he struggled to deal with the $2.9 million loss Perth Glory suffered in 2019. Being unable to pay off the loss has boiled down to the fact that in sports these days, being a sole owner of a club is a very risky and difficult task financially. As of 2022, Sage's fears have been further increased as he has now suffered a $5 million loss due mainly to COVID-19, and this has now led to him amassing a loss of $40 million since he took ownership in 2007. On the other hand, this has not been an issue faced by a team such as Melbourne City FC, who is owned by the global company who is in control of 10 different football clubs around the world, including Manchester City in England and New York City FC in America, and is valued at over $6 billion. Now, something which also stuck out with Perth Glory's acquisition was the fact that the investment was not done by an Australian entity, but rather that of an overseas UK-based company, the London Football Exchange. This is not an unheard occurrence in the A-League, as it seems that around half of the teams in the league are owned by foreign investors, which includes teams such as Melbourne City FC, Brisbane Roar, and Sydney FC. The reasoning behind this is that foreign investors have looked at the A-League as being a small, burgeoning market ripe for foreign investment and growth. This is also happening all around the Australian sports market. In cricket, for example, with the BBL now looking like a promising business venture to invest in for Indian investors. The LFE has a stronger financial standing and ability than Sage when it comes to running Perth Glory, and this was a reason why he chose to do this deal with the LFE. Thanks for tuning in this week, guys, and we will see you next week on the Oz Finance Weekly.